Good morning, everybody. We're now just finishing up just the last line in Perek Hay of Orot Tachuvah, of Lights of Return. The last sentence, which we read yesterday, but I want to explore it in depth just a tiny bit. So Rav Kook had talked about the Jewish people as being the vanguard of Teshuvah, that it's something which particularly in the essence of the Jewish people it's our job. We don't always know it, but it is our job, and who we are is to return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to try to develop that godly potential that we have for the entire world. And that's where Rav Kook says in his last sentence, ואחר כך תהיה היא הצינור המיוחד המשפיע את לשד החיים של תאוות התשובה העדינה. על כל העולם כולו להאיר אותו לקומי מצבו. And afterwards, that the Jewish people will become a conduit. Remember, we talked about a pipeline, a tzinur in Hebrew. A pipeline, a conduit, which is going to cause to flow the sap of life. Not sap in the sense of like this is sapping me of my strength. It's the exact opposite. Sap like in a tree, like the vital juice of something. We're going to cause to flow the vital juice of vitality for a desire of delicate tshuva to the entire world, to illuminate the world and to resurrect the world from its place. Now, I just want to discuss some of these terms here. So Rav Kook talks about what an interesting phrase, ta'avat ha'tshuva ha'adina. So ta'ava in Hebrew means yearning. But the word ta'ava often has a yearning sense, which would be best translated as lust, ta'ava. And it usually has a negative sense. Like when people speak Ashkenazi Hebrew, a taiva. Taiva is just the Ashkenazi pronunciation of ta'ava in Hebrew. So a person says he has a taiva. Taiva means not a positive thing, like lusting for a really big hamburger with French fries and a Coke. That would be lusting. But Rav Kook uses that same word in the context of something which is so positive. The profound desire for teshuvah adina, this delicate teshuvah. So that itself is a very revealing phrase that the world is going to become so transformed that people are going to have the same desire for teshuvah, for return to God, that they would have for something which is like a physical desire, which is unhealthy. So we're going to have a lust for good things. Can you imagine that? Imagine that someone's going to have to hold you back because you're lusting for good things. Right? That's what this desire is going to be. And then he refers to teshuvah, this return, using a very interesting word, adina. Adina means delicate, adin. Like there is a common woman's name, Adina. You may have met somebody named Adina before. So that's that word, adina, which means delicate. So we're going to have a tremendous, profound desire for a delicate teshuvah. What is a delicate teshuvah as opposed to an indelicate teshuvah? What's that all about? So Rav Avider explains that the Talmud talks about two types of teshuvah, a lower teshuvah and a higher teshuvah, which is really the sort of the more of a Kabbalistic way of calling it. But in the Talmud itself, it's called tshuva me ahava and tshuva me yira. Tshuva out of love and tshuva out of fear. Okay, this is actually just left over from yesterday. The two types of tshuva of love and tshuva of fear. Okay, so what is tshuva out of fear? Tshuva out of fear is tshuva out of concern about consequences, like a practically based teshuvah. Like if I don't walk the straight and narrow, something not good is going to happen. So that's called tshuva me yira. Tshuva out of fear. But there's another type of tshuva, which is called in the Talmud tshuva me'ahava, tshuva out of love. Tshuva out of love is not, I'm concerned about the practical consequences of my bad behavior. Tshuva out of love is because just positive. I'm drawn towards goodness, right? Like Rav Kook talked about, I have a Tava. I have a deep yearning for goodness. And the Jewish people are going to become the vanguard to show the world, to radiate into the world a desire for goodness for its own sake, not because of fear of consequences. And Rav Kook in a different essay, not in this particular one, says an amazing thing. I'm good. So you don't have the text in front of you. I'm just going to read it to you. Hishpanu al haolam rak limudei chovot musar v'tzedek hayotzei midat elokim emet. You know, when people think globally about like the contribution of the Bible to the world, people write a book. Like there's this really good writer. He's Catholic. I think he's like an Irish Catholic. Wrote a book about Jewish history. Also writes books about Paul Johnson. Are you familiar with his writing? Yeah, really good stuff. So he wrote a book, really good book. He did his homework. I think it's called The Jews, something like that. Or wow, whatever. I don't remember the name of it anymore. It doesn't matter. So, the people decide, the Jews contributed to the Bible of the world. I mean, first of all, we didn't. God contributed to the Bible of the world. It's through the Jews, but right, we don't get any credit. Didn't write the book, right? So just reminds me. Someone once told me that the art scroll chumash that a lot of people use, including us. So some call it the stone chumash because someone named Stone contributed the money. So someone told me that there was once like kind of a reception to honor, the contributors. And I know someone says something about, hey, maybe we should get a signature of the contributor on the book. Like they contributed the book. Okay, not exactly. God contributed the book. Okay, so in any case, the reason I mention this is because when people think about sort of what's the contribution to the world, so Rav Kook says that that's often perceived globally, and it's been this way for several thousand years, that what does the Bible add to the world? It adds like a moral conscience. There's right and wrong in the world. That's right? And there was, before the Torah, there was really actually, the only thing that really was there is might makes right. But there's something called morality that's independent of practicality. That's an important distinction. There is, you don't have to have a message from God to realize that, if private property doesn't exist and it's just stealing is okay, right? So it's very hard to live in a society like that. But that's just practical, right? For practical purposes, if people are murdering each other and stealing, it's sort of hard to just get by on a day-to-day basis. There has to be a certain kind of respect of property and respect for life, etc. That's utilitarian. That's just practical. It's not because there's some kind of absolute value there. So the Torah comes into the world and says, wait a second, beyond the practical value of these kind of things, it happens to also be that something is right for its own sake. It's just intrinsically good. And that's something we should yearn for. So that makes a lot of sense. The only problem is, as Zev just told us, that people don't always feel warm and fuzzy about having their abilities to act limited, right? To be told you can't do something because it's immoral, right? There's something about a certain aspect of human nature that wants to be unfettered, that wants to be unlimited, that I want to be able to follow my own will and do whatever I want to, whatever in my interests. And when someone comes along and says, no, you can't do that because it's wrong. So there's a little voice within human nature that says, I resent that. You're curbing my fun. You're a party pooper, right? Now, of course, I'm making light of it. But as Zev just told us, Hitler said that. Right? Hitler said that the Jewish people brought guilt into the world. It used to be you could do whatever you wanted. You didn't feel guilty about it. You felt, as a matter of fact, very vital. You feel like you're more part of the natural world. You know, animals don't exactly look up in the moral law codes for guidance on their behavior. They just do, right? And they don't lose sleep over it.
That's what he distorted Nietzsche.
Yeah, and it's all based upon. It's all beasted upon. It's all based upon
Nietzsche would be horrified, I think, to think that his ideas were put to this use.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Rav Kook actually was interested in the thinking of Nietzsche. There's some essays that talk about perhaps the influence of Nietzsche on Rav Kook. But in any case, so that's what Rav Kook here says in this other essay, that people don't want to accept liability. People don't want to accept obligation, right? That's not human nature. And even when human society accepts this idea of limitation, there's a certain resentment and hatred towards the person who imposed or brought into the world the knowledge that something is right and wrong. Like, I'm not sure I really like you. As a matter of fact, I think you spoiled my fun, right? And so Rav Kook says that this, in fact, is the source of anti-Semitism. That's a really interesting idea. The source of anti-Semitism, which seems to not go away, it's so pernicious. This makes a lot of sense, because if anti-Semitism were based upon circumstances, whatever, economic circumstances, political circumstances, religious issues, theology, it'd be very hard to explain how anti-Semitism is so long-lasting and expresses itself in so many different permutations. But this does explain it, because when people look at the Jews, there's a certain subconscious resentment of, you spoiled my party. Okay. And then Rav Kook goes on, but you know something, in the future, when the Jewish people become the vanguard of tshuva, right? And they're going to act as a conduit. That's what Rav Kook had said, a tzinur. We talked about that word pipe. They're going to act as a conduit for this tshuva to come into the world. People know that the way of life of true delight is coming to the world through the Jewish people. You see, why is it that people don't want to be limited in their behavior? Because they think that by following what they want to do, they'll have more fun. Because fun is the ultimate arbiter and barometer of the meaning of life. Now, of course, I say fun in kind of a facetious way, but we could say pleasure, desire, right? People want to have pleasure, right? That's the pleasure principle. That's what's driving us, right? So if people think that stealing somebody else's property or whatever it may be do is going to contribute to their fun, oh, he has a Jaguar and I only have a Pinto. I don't think they make those anymore. But you know, I want his car. It'd be more fun, more pleasure, right? Or I want his wife or whatever, right? So, but somehow the spirit of tshuva will come into the world through the Jewish people in the ultimate future, when we become our role as being the vanguard of tshuva will be actualized. People will realize, as Rav Kook says, that ha'oneg ha'amiti. What's amiti mean from the word emet?
Truth.
True. The truthful oneg. What's oneg mean? Like oneg Shabbos?
Yes.
Delight, pleasure. The true delight is, in fact, when we live a life in full fidelity to our true inner godly nature. That's the truest delight.
I heard an example one time, if I can share it.
Yeah, but you got to speak up so the microphone
Okay,
can
I heard
get
an
you.
example. This is a Jewish Israeli singer, and his example was, I don't remember the name of the rabbi, one of the great rabbis that was killed by having a Torah wrapped around him and that sponge wool put on his chest to prolong his suffering. But the executioner, you know, he saw him suffering, but he saw that, you know, he was praising Hashem. He says, if I take the wool off your chest, I'm paraphrasing, if I take the wool off your chest and speed up your death, will you forgive me? And he said, yes. And so at that moment, the Gentile did tshuva mi'ava and tshuva meira and tshuva mi'ava. Threw himself into the fire.
That's an amazing story. Thank you.
Example of that.
That was an example of how someone could realize the truth in a moment,
Right.
And that would be the culmination of their sort of function in the world. in that particular case. And that's a very deep and elusive insight that acting in a godly way is the ultimate ta'anug, is the ultimate pleasure. And this is something we all experience on a day-to-day basis. And Dr. Koff in his practice is struggling with on a day-to-day basis, how people are drawn towards certain behaviors because they think that it is attractive to them. And they don't realize that there's a much more pleasurable way of living. There's an oneg, there's a delight which is much deeper. That's as the oneg of being true to our godly essence. So Rav Kook goes on in this essay you don't have in front of you. Et osher achayin anoten lo et erko asher mibaladohu shalul kol erech va'oneg v'osher zeh davar hashaveh lekol. This delight, which is to live in a godly way, is something which is universal, it's acceptable to all, works for all people if we would do it. Al kol panim lachshok bo v'tamakor mashpia osher va'oneg mechabim mechabim, and that in the ultimate future, people are going to say, "Wow, you taught me that lesson, that by living a godly way, that's the truest, profound delight, incomparable to those things I thought were delightful." You know what it's like, a child. So the Rambam talks about how education works. So with a young child, you say, you know what, if you study this page of Torah, I'm going to give you a little piece of chocolate. Right? Whoa, I'm there. You see this in a lot of synagogues. There's like often there's like a candy man.
Used to have one of those.
Right? There's a candy man. So like, why is there a candy man? So because it gives the kids incentive to come to synagogue, right? And probably gives delight to the candy man too. Okay.
Somebody said that last night at Chabad that the Rebbe liked chocolate.
Really? Okay.
Because on Pesach, a lot of families would eat only that which you could make yourself, packaged things. Somebody said the Rebbe would eat chocolate.
Yeah, interesting. So the Rambam says that's in the beginning, right? But when the person gets older, right, and appreciates how beautiful the Torah is, they don't need the chocolate anymore, right? That they study Torah because of the intrinsic delight of the Torah. So it's the same thing in terms of the world, right? That the world can be kind of like a child, right? That they get motivated by things that they think have value, but from an adult perspective, as it were, Jaguar, somebody else's wife, all these different things. You think that that's delight? That ain't nothing. The real delight is divinity, right? And so that's why when people realize that, and they'll realize it through Israel being the vanguard of tshuva, which is, right, it's not today, it's not tomorrow. Maybe it'll be tomorrow, but it's probably, right? We got a long ways to go towards this. So that's why when the prophet, we ended yesterday's discussion with this, that 10 people, the prophet says, Zechariah, the prophet says, will grab on to the hem of the garment of a Jew and say, I'm with you, here, take me, right? That's going to happen because people will be turned on to that difference between tshuva me'ira, like just doing things because it's an obligation, which actually has a certain amount of resentment, to tshuva me'ahava, tshuva out of love, because of the love of the intrinsic value of something, and not for simply utilitarian purpose, which has a very negative impact. So that's what Rav Kook means here when he talks about tshuva ha'adina, that Israel is going to the vanguard of a tshuva which is adina, which is delicate, right? That's the higher teshuvah. Okay, you know what? We just finished now our complete discussion of Perek Hey. So we'll pause here, and next week we will start Perek Vav, the sixth chapter. Have a great day.